Hello, thank you for joining us on another NCHC podcast. My name is Paul Gilmore, and joining me for this episode is a player from the PT Warriors, and they had a deep run to the Undisputed National Championship game last year, and All-American, and this year on the All-American watch list, and we're excited to have him join us on this podcast. His name is Toby Pike. Toby, how are you doing this evening?
Doing well today. Thanks. How are you, Mr. Gilmore?
I'm doing well. Thank you for asking. I know we caught up this past weekend. For those of y'all that are listening, this is launching the day after the regionals, and we both were at the Big South Regional just this past weekend up there in Frisco. And I did want to ask you, just because it's so recent, it's so fresh, coming off that weekend, PT on Thursday, kind of surprisingly, in my opinion, dropped both games in pool play. However, you were able to bounce back and win a tough game against Aggieland, and then, of course, win that last game on Saturday as well. But I wanted to ask you your thoughts on the weekend and kind of how you thought everything went over there at Frisco.
Well, obviously, we probably didn't come out expecting to go 0-2 on Thursday. That was a little bit of a surprise. But, things like that happen. It's a lesson learned. You got to come out ready to fight. We had an early game. Thursday morning we had the 9 a.m. game, and then we had the 8:30 p.m. game. And so it's really easy to lose your focus during the day. And, Houston, they played a really good game Thursday morning and got us on the last second shot at the end of the game. And then we played another tough game against San Antonio, and they played better than we did. And then so Thursday was definitely a letdown, but Friday we were like, all right, we need to lock in. We need to win. So Friday we were able to come out, play a really, really tough game down to the wire with Aggieland. It was probably like a 2 or 3 point game with like 30 seconds left. We managed to stretch that out, hit some free throws, and then we won on Saturday against Dallas Thunder to win 9th. So it wasn't what we wanted, but it was the best we could do. So at least, we finished in the top 9, which is what we needed to do.
Well, and I appreciate you answering honestly and candidly about that, because a lot of the times, and you and I were talking about this before the show started recording, that a lot of the times, the purpose of this podcast is to highlight the homeschool athletes and everything that they're doing. And we're certainly going to do that in this podcast. But I certainly appreciate your candidness on, whenever there's some adversity and things don't go your way. This was the exact regionals last year that you guys had a chance to play MHEA before you got to nationals, and of course, made that deep run to the Undisputed. And so I would imagine that you're probably taking this same tournament this year and using that as experience going towards nationals. And, that's the thing about these tournaments. When you get to a regional, it's a very, very deep pool of teams. And that's why you get to nationals and you might see 10, 11, 12 teams from the Big South in that Division I bracket at nationals. But you're right. You guys did what you needed to do. You secured that top 9 finish and that Division I spot up at nationals. So certainly be looking forward to here just in 2 weeks, which is crazy to think about.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
So going back to last season, you guys, when you got to nationals, y'all had an unbelievable run. I remember I saw y'all at the regional, and you see teams earlier in the year, and you kind of not quite sure how it always is going to play out. And I know sometimes it depends, it's matchup dependent as well, but you get to nationals and you get by far the deepest run in program history, a regional Final Four, make it to the Undisputed National Championship game. What was it like to have a season like that last year?
I don't want to say it like you just said it, but unbelievable. We went to regionals. We had one of our best tournaments of the season right there. We get to nationals. The brackets fell just right. We peaked at the right time. All the players on our team, the maturity of the seniors, it all came together. And it was a great experience. We went up there, and that was my 3rd time going to nationals. The 2 times before, we had been in Division II, and we went up there. It was a great time together as a team. But just being able to, the expectancy of we just won. And we just won again. We're in the national championship game. It was definitely the culmination of the season everybody wanted. And then also it was the 20th anniversary of our organization, the PT Warriors. So for that to happen on the 20th anniversary, to peak at that time, it was really special. So yeah, that was definitely probably one of my greatest experiences ever, being able to play on that stage.
In that national championship game, you had the opportunity to face the three-peat champion MHEA Eagles, who are now, of course, gunning for a fourth in a row. But you guys played them at both regionals and at nationals. What would you say that you learned from those experiences?
First, I want to say like MHEA is a three-time champion, three-peat for a reason. You know, they're a strong organization. They're great competitors. I would say the things I learned would probably be mental toughness, controlling your emotions, and tuning out the noise. Because all their fans came both times, they cheered on. They're real tough players to beat. And so, I mean, we lost twice, but the first game was close, the second game not as much. But it was all about having the mental toughness. You know, the competitiveness of those games were really quite high. And it's a privilege to play tough teams like them, and it really makes you better. And I mean, if it falls right, I would look forward to playing them again. It's a fun game. It's real competitive. It's probably one of the greatest games to play is against them.
So speaking of that, you talked about, getting that experience to go against them again. If you look at from the girls' side and the boys' side in last year's Undisputeds, both the HEA Firebirds on the girls' side, the San Marcos Panthers on the girls' side, you guys in MHEA, all have teams that for the most part are coming back similar to what you were last year. There wasn't, 5, 6 seniors graduating on each team. So all of those teams were kind of expecting to have a deep run, as much as possible. And when you get to that point where you reach the mountaintop, maybe not quite all the way to the summit of winning it, but you get to the national championship, the natural inclination is sometimes to assume, we'll get back there next year. We'll have another shot at it. But we always know that it's never that easy, right? No matter what level you are, there's no guarantees. So what are the expectations when you get to nationals this year, and how you kind of gear up to make another deep run with this team?
There is definitely a lot of pressure to return to a high level like that. I mean, it's probably been every tournament we've went to. Everybody's like, so y'all going back to the championship again next year? And I'm like, we'll try our best, but sometimes it just, in college, every team wants to go to the national championship, and teams are good and they just don't make it. And like you said, we lost 2 starters last year. And so they were tall, so we lost a lot of height, but that gives room for people to step up. And we've had quite a few players step up this year, and now we're back in D1. So my dad said the dynamics are different, but the expectation is the same. Like, I don't want last year to be the Cinderella story. I want this year, next year, the next year for PT. I'd like to make that as much possible to go back up there. So if it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen, but the expectation for me and my team, we want to go back up there and win.
Yeah, I think that's well said. As a matter of fact, when you look at the dynamics, like you mentioned, every year you have, even if you bring a lot of the same players back, you're going to have different dynamics on the team. Like you mentioned, people get older, some people's roles change on the team. So I agree with you. I think it's easier said than done for sure. But we're certainly looking forward to seeing you guys compete up there. We've got pool play again in Division 1 for the boys. So certainly some opportunities to be won and to be had over there. What advice would you give to fellow homeschool athletes? Having been through this process of playing at a high level for homeschool athletics, what advice would you give to fellow homeschool athletes?
Right. So I'm sure a lot of people watching this probably don't know much about my background. From 1st through 6th grade, I played upwards, and then, I played the youth association in the town. And that was fine, but homeschool has definitely been the greatest place for me to play. They offer so many opportunities to grow spiritually, socially, physically. Every tournament I see people I played against maybe a year ago, but the bond's still there of homeschool. Oh, we're homeschooled. We know exactly what each other's doing. We're playing sports together. That's probably, make friends. I have friends on teams. I see people that I don't even know, but we're homeschooled and we play basketball together, and we automatically have a bond right there. And the competition in size keeps growing. Every year I'm looking, regionals, man, we added 3 teams I've never even heard of, and these teams are pretty good. Like Houston, they're relatively new. Texas Lions, they're new. Both of them showed up to regionals and competed. I mean, NCHBC is a great area to compete, and they keep making a great platform and spotlight for homeschool basketball. Before, a couple years ago, I didn't know much about NCHBC, nationals, regionals. There wasn't a whole lot of oh, there's a national homeschool tournament. But now, they're putting it out on the different social media platforms. People are learning about it. I just say, you go out there, you play, you make friends. It's what it's all about. And so I've really enjoyed playing homeschool, and I hope other people do too.
Well, and you guys, y'all play in the Dallas Fort Worth Metroplex. For the people that are listening that don't know, PT Warriors are based out of the Fort Worth area, and so throughout the year, you guys have the opportunity to play against high level teams in that area. I mean, it's one of the top basketball areas in the country, and so what is it like to compete against teams in that area? And how do you guys go about finding games against some of those top teams? Do you ever find that there's some issues with teams not wanting to play against a homeschool team?
Yeah, so starting off, the DFW area is tough. Like homeschool teams, Dash, Dallas Thunder, HSAA, there's tough teams around here. The door's been opened. We've been playing private schools, like really tough private schools, Grace Prep. We've played in a couple like tough private school tournaments. We've been given an opportunity to start playing public school teams, and we played Dunbar High School this year in a great game. And it's hard because sometimes you go out and you might play a private school that doesn't recruit basketball, and you might go and have a really great game and beat them by 30 points. And sometimes we'll play a prep school and they'll go out and they're really good at basketball and they'll whoop us too. So it is definitely one of the most competitive areas I've ever played in. But going about finding teams is hard because some teams, like you're homeschooled. I've had 3 people come up and ask me if homeschool is co-ed. And I'm like, no, we're competitive basketball. And some people are like, oh, you're probably not very good. But most people, I mean, you can look at our record the past 2 years. So most people take us pretty seriously. There's some really strong teams around here, and most every night that we play, it's a fight, which is what we're looking for, tough competition.
Like you mentioned, I think there's a little bit more awareness than there was, maybe 15, 20 years ago with the advent of social media and film. And, obviously a lot of homeschool athletes are trying to get their name out there and get seen. And so I think there's a little bit less of an element of surprise for some of those teams to realize like, oh, yeah, no, those kids can ball compared to, maybe 20 years ago, they figured we were all playing in denim and, khakis and stuff like that. So I'm glad you guys are able to compete and do well in that Dallas area. Your coach, Coach Bowen, I had a chance to talk to him at this regionals and of course, different tournaments that we go through throughout the years. And so he's been the coach of PT going on about 7 years now. What is it like to have that level of continuity in the program? And what is it like to have someone who played at that next level kind of coaching and guiding you guys throughout the season?
It has probably been one of the biggest blessings to play with Coach Bowen. To have a godly man on the sideline who's, he'll get after you, but he loves you so much. He loves everybody on the team. And he had a successful college playing career. His sons went on to play college. If I remember right, he coached about 40 years of public school, high school basketball at Boswell here in Fort Worth, Lake Worth area. And to have someone that's seen the game, that loves the game, he'll come. He came and watched me before I came on varsity. He'd come and watch the 14U games. 8 o'clock in the morning, he was there watching the 14U games, and he didn't even know a kid on the team. And his love for everybody in the program, for other teams, it has just been. He's not just an asset. He's like the dad of the team almost, the grandfather that everybody loves. He's low 70s now, but he will be there every time you need something. And it has been a blessing to have him, on the court, at home. Sometimes he comes over. We'll see him at practice. He's there early, talking to the younger players. He just leaves a legacy wherever he goes. And so it's just a blessing to have him around.
It tells me a lot about him. That the first things you mentioned about him is his status as a godly man. Some people would have been like, oh, he's a great basketball coach. He knows the X's and O's. But the first thing you mentioned was how, much of a godly man he was, and that, one of your favorite things is him going to watch other age levels. And I think that just says a lot about him and the culture within your organization, that you speak kindly of him in that way. And we talked about him playing at the next level. His sons played at the next level. Not to necessarily look ahead, because you still have nationals coming up. But I'm just curious for you, what does it look like for you? What's next for Toby Pike? Right.
So obviously, can't skip over nationals, biggest culmination event of the year. Just a junior this year, so really looking forward to finishing high school career academically and athletically. Want to continue working, growing my basketball skills. Looking for what the Lord has to open doors for me, maybe playing at the college level. Definitely the summer AAU. Then next fall, hoping to, whatever happens this year at Nationals, do what we can next year, come to culmination of the senior year, play as hard as I can. That's really what I'm looking for. I'd really like to play college basketball. So really putting in the work for that, going to church, friends, family, school, really the important things right now.
So, what would you say are some of the goals that you're setting for yourself this season or next season to reach those places that you want to reach?
All right. First of all, I want to become a better Christ follower. I want to be light to others on and off the court. I want people to look at him and be like, man, he's playing different than the other people. I wonder why. I want to have character. My dad always talks about you gotta have character on and off the court. And second, academically, athletically, I want to grow myself, go to college. I want to earn a degree. If playing basketball fits in, paying for college, hopefully that would be honestly a really nice. Really desire somewhere where I can go. My leadership and my work contributes to the success of the program. So really, those are the big things. Becoming a better Christ follower, playing basketball in college, those are probably my two biggest goals right now. And in high school, I want our team to succeed as well.
I think, like, similar to that other answer you gave about your coach, I think it speaks very well of you that the first response that you had was to be an example as a Christ follower on the court and off the court. Again, I think it's really easy to get caught up in the basketball side of it and be like, oh, I want to practice, game speed, or I want to, hit 5,000 shots a day. But again, I think it speaks very well of you that the first thing you thought of was how to be an example of Christ, because really that's what it's all about. And that kind of leads me to my next question, which is, how does your faith, your own personal relationship with Christ, how does that play into the way that you conduct yourself on and off the court in the game of basketball?
So, I talk to my parents and coach all the time, I didn't become, so I'm 6'8", so I didn't become 6'8", because I ate my vegetables and drank milk every day. Obviously, God played the biggest role in that. He's given me height, strength. So I think I'm pretty smart. I feel like I ought to glorify God with those talents. And so it's really easy, like you said, to get caught up in basketball because, you'll be on a roll, 5 games, 6 games, maybe 15 to 20 points each game. You're like, all right, man, I'm doing pretty good, And then God comes around. I've had some humbling games. And you don't shoot good, you're not focusing, and then you're like, oh, what happened? And I'm like, oh, God just showed you it's not all about you. He's the one that's giving you the strengths to play. And so I think number one, glorifying him with the way I play, playing with character, playing with the light. I think that's the most important thing. I think that's how it affects the most. And then, a lot of times in the heat of the game, you score on someone scores on you. It's really easy to say something to him, be like, oh yeah, man, on your head, I just scored on you. And that's really something I've had to pay attention to how I talk sometimes, because it's easy. It's really easy to say something to someone if it's a tight game, 2-3 points. Oh, we just went ahead a bucket. That's right, we just scored. And just sometimes the best thing to do is just be quiet and to just play. And coach always says, do the next right thing. So the next right thing is really never saying something to someone else. It's always getting back, playing defense, getting the rebound. So, honoring God, playing with character, showing Christ-like behavior, I think those are probably the top ways I try to play basketball.
It reminds me of that thought process of, it would amaze people how quickly things can be ripped away. As much as they're given to you, it can be amazing how quickly things are taken away. And so I appreciate you giving that perspective of beyond basketball, because eventually someday we all stop playing basketball. Right? You might still be involved, you might still coach, you might still do different things like that, but your playing days will come to an end. I guess unless you're LeBron James and you just play till you're 50. But for everybody else, every other mortal person, there is an end to that story. And so it's very encouraging to me that your foundation seems to be the right perspective, good head on your shoulders for what it actually means, which is to be a representative of Christ on the court, off the court. And I think it's honestly, I'm going to be honest with you. I haven't had a lot of conversations with you, but I think it speaks well of you and tells people a lot about you and your character, that, the way that you've answered these questions and conducted this interview. So I really appreciate the way that you've just been a great example for anybody that's going to watch this, or knows you personally or doesn't know you. I hope they, get to know you. And, of course, they saw you on the court last year at Nationals, but yeah, hopefully people come up and get a chance to talk to you off the court as well.
Yes,
So
yeah.
one last question before I let you go. I want to ask you, you're not quite done yet. You still got another year after this, but when you think back through your homeschool career, what would you say is your singular fondest memory that you have as a homeschool athlete, either on or off the court, or both?
That's tough, since you just brought up nationals last year. I would say one of my biggest highlights is probably the first time I ever dunked in game. That was like, I can remember exactly where it was, what time of the day it was, who we were playing, what color jersey we were wearing, what shoes I was wearing. That was probably one of the biggest, individual moments. And then probably last year at Nationals, just playing in the championship game. It wasn't the outcome we wanted, but just the opportunity, like how many people were there, how many people were cheering us on. That was probably the two biggest highlights I've ever had. Those are definitely something I'll carry on.
Well, I wanted to thank you for your time that we have for this podcast, and obviously going to be, rooting for you to do well at Nationals, and certainly be looking forward to seeing you guys up at Springfield. And again, for anybody that's listening, Toby Pike is certainly someone to be looking out for. The PT Warriors in the purple and gold up there at Nationals. So, Toby, once again, thank you for your time, and we'll speak to you soon.
Thank you very much.